Danny, how have you and the family been, mate?
Yeah, good. Obviously, it's been a tough time for me and the family really with what happened with my brother last year. But it's it's been a sort of good time as well to sort of realise what's important. And yeah, we just had another little girl as well. So I've got two little girls now, one at 3 and one at 8 months. So that takes up a lot of my time. And, my wife, she's obviously been on maternity leave as well. So she's sort of took an extended break from work. So since all that happened last year, I've just had a really lot of close family time. And it's been great, to be honest with you. Obviously, there's been some bad times, but they've been really good in sort of keeping things together and realizing what's been important again, and enjoying that time together as a family. And it's been nice. We've been enjoying a bit of sunshine in garden today in sunny Wakefield, and looking forward to those summer months rolling round.
Yeah, hopefully, mate, innit? Hopefully. So, before we get stuck into your rugby story, Danny, where was home for you and as a kid, and who lived at home with you?
So I grew up with my mum and dad. We started off in a little village called Street House. They had a really good amateur team, so a real sort of mining town, rugby league village as well. And then we moved to New Charleston, which is about a couple of miles up the road, and we were there right through childhood, really. Got a younger sister called Amy, who was a year younger than me, and then my brother was sort of 3 or 4 years younger. And yeah, grew up and stayed sort of in the pit village all the way through, really. And we had a great upbringing, lots of love from my mum and dad. Sort of rugby league were always in the sort of background. My dad played sort of amateur for Street House in Charleston, and then went and played for Scarborough Pirates for a little bit as well when they had a team. And yeah, just loved that village sort of community feel, and that's how we sort of grew up, really.
Right. So, with you coming first, mate, when did you notice, or do you remember, like, when that competitive edge kicked in for you, or are you quite laid back anyway?
I mean, I am sort of laid back in general, but I hate losing at stuff. So I've got an older cousin who's he's a year older than me, and then I've got a cousin who's a year younger than me. Both boys, Gareth and Luke. And my older cousin, he played rugby as well, and he sort of kind of led me into it a little bit. He started obviously a bit before me, and he played it. I don't know why he played at Doncaster Toll Bar, which was miles away, and then he ended up moving back to Stanley, but. I remember us three as cousins, we used to play out on sort of green out front of houses, and we'd knock hell out of each other for hours on end, and it was always like a Challenge Cup final or whatever. And I always
Yeah.
wanted to win in that sort of thing, and just like computer games and stuff, I'd always want to win that. And then obviously when I got a bit older and my brother started tagging along with me all the time, everything sort of football, rugby when we were playing out, hide and seek. I'd want to win at all that, but away from that, I'm quite placid, really. But I'm same now. I'm very laid back and chilled. But any sort of game, whether it be training, touch and pass, even if it's just a laugh, golfing with my mates, I want to win everything. It's just something that's in me. I don't like to lose too much.
That's fair enough. And where was your first club then? Because, like you said, Doncaster Toll Bar's a fair whack from you.
Yeah, so I sort of followed him then. He came back and played for Stanley Rangers. So Charleston didn't have a junior set up back then. So I played for Stanley Rangers right through, from under sevens right through to under 18s. Charleston, then they got a team sort of just as I was going to high school. So it was hard work, like, all my mates from school played for Charleston, and we used to get them in like Wakey Cup final all the time. So obviously being at school with them, I'd get hammered all week and that, and then they'd try and give me it in game as well.
Imagine that all being on your bill and just getting shit off everyone.
Yeah, honestly, it was hard work. Like, it used to get my head took off, and obviously as you get older, it gets a bit rougher as well. So we started out at like 13, and it went right through. But we had a better team than them. To be fair, we were quite an established junior team, so We tended to get the wins, but they definitely give me a good idea.
Do you know, just slightly off top, you know that Doncaster Tall Bar, mate? I only heard of them recently. You see that video?
Oh yeah, it's
He took
shocking.
that like a champ, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. No one ran in, or did they? It was
No, I was
pretty.
shocked at that. It was quite chill,
Yeah,
but it's bad that.
I mean, he shouldn't play again, really. Him, should he? Like, it's.
No, it's different if like they're having a scrap and he's just got the
Yeah,
better of him, and
yeah,
it's a bit different there. But
yeah.
yeah, he took it like a champ, like didn't flinch or nothing.
I know.
So, so do you know when you were in junior school then, mate? Was there like town team stuff for you, or was there a town team?
Yeah, so we just basically played a bit of rugby at school. So we had when I was at junior school, we had a rugby field on pitch. I mean, a lot of schools now don't tend to have them, do they? At junior age. So we'd sort of play rugby at school against local teams and stuff like that. And it was just literally school versus school. So there were no sort of like Wakefield team as such until you went into high school, really.
Okay, and how was your transition into high school, mate?
Oh, I loved it. It were obviously it's quite daunting when you first start, and I was pretty quiet when I first went up, and I just remember that signing that big first assembly and looking around, and all kids from it's like they're from another world, isn't it? When they're from next village. But I met some really good mates in my form at school. Were James Lockwood, who captains Featherstone. So we've been best mates from sort of year 7 at school. So that's been a good journey that we've been on together, really, with rugby. Obviously, we played each other at Wembley in that 1895 Cup as well. And they got the win. He used to play for like Charleston and Crofton, so I've beat him in loads of Wakefield Cup finals, and then he beats me in that at Wembley. So I had to give him that one.
And you probably had it all through school with him as well, that little bit of banter.
Yeah. So I've been all through school with him, same class, and then I was best man at his wedding as well. Like, so we've been good mates a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine you had some ammo on him there.
Just a bit.
So, what was the standard of school rugby like compared to club rugby, with you being quite well established at club level?
I mean, with our school team, it was kind of a weird time. I feel like it was a time where football was probably just starting to take over rugby a little bit. So our first few years, we had a PE teacher called David Oxley, and he was really into rugby. So we were massively pushed towards rugby, and we all played rugby league. We had a decent school team that, again, you'd play like local teams from Wakefield, really. Nothing much more than that. So we never really went in any sort of national cups or stuff like that. But we had regular games, and we played it in PE quite a bit, which were nice as well.
Mate. So, would your club side have played in them types of competitions, the national cups and stuff?
Yeah. So we Stanley, we played in national cup and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, we got to semi-final one year. I think we played Blackbrook, and they had quite a few sort of players that have gone on to have really good careers. I think James Graham played in that team and stuff like that. So yeah, they give us a good beating, like.
Yeah. No, so was Union ever tried to be played at school, or were you just out and out rugby league school?
Yeah, we were out and out rugby league. Yeah, so there is quite a bit of union in our area, but it's more sort of your private schools. So obviously we've got sort of Queen Elizabeth Grammar School and stuff like that in Wakefield, which are really big rugby union schools. But in our school, we never really never heard of it. So about 19.
So is it seen as like quite elitist stuff around Wakefield and that, with it being at a private
to
school?
be fair, probably where I'm from, like I said, it's a real mining community, so there's sort of a number of villages and towns that are built around, they were built around pits basically, and obviously rugby league was sort of intertwined with that, so a lot of players back in the day had worked down pit and then go and play. So yeah, union's not too big really. It's probably seen as a bit of an elitist sport.
Right, mate. And would it have been something that you'd have had a go at?
Yeah, I would have liked to. I mean, I like playing all sports. So as a kid, I played football as well in goal. I played cricket a little bit, and I play a lot of golf as well. So I'd have had a go at it. Yeah, by all means. I mean, watching it doesn't excite me as much as rugby league does to watch. But I sort of, as I've got older, I kind of understand the intricacies of it a little bit more, and I can see why the game is as it is. But I mean, it were always rugby league for me. I just love playing it as a kid, and even now I'm excited by playing the game. It's a bit harder training and things like that when you get to my age, but playing still really excites me, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. No, good. So when you're in and around competitive environments at that age, was your ambition to be professional rugby league player, or what was you looking towards through high school?
Well, I mean, I dreamt of being a rugby league player. That's what I always wanted to do. My cousin, he signed for Bradford Academy full time. Well, he signed full time for Bradford when he was 16. So that was kind of like, I could see that it was possible, to do that. And I sort of signed for Wakefield Academy then when I was 16. Played a few games with them, and then I hurt my knee. So the season kind of came to an end, and it just sort of went separate ways, really. I weren't on a sort of contract or anything like that. But I always sort of, wanted to do that. But I had sort of my mum in back of my ear all the time, it's not a proper career that you need a backup option, which you do. So I went on to college after that. I went to New College in Pontefract, and luckily they had a really good rugby team as well. So there were people like Rich Whiting who played for Hull FC at that college, and we played in some decent games with them. To be fair, we beat the national champions in a game. Which were a team from London that had like Mike Warranty and Louis McCarthy in that team. And yeah, that again, we played quite a bit of rugby there, and we sport at college. We used to get Wednesday afternoons off, so they sort of were pushing me to play, and I were happy to get the Wednesday afternoons off as well. So I did my A levels there, and then I signed for Featherstone when I was 18, but with that being part-time, I went to university still. I went to Leeds Met to do a degree in PE, basically, to be a PE teacher. And then I got wind that I was going to get an opportunity to go full-time. So I packed uni in about 4 months in. But I didn't dare tell my mum at first. So
Still going in with your big bag and that.
I used to bob out on the morning, so I'd bob out on the morning, only for a couple of weeks, and I thought, I have to tell her really. So I kind of got wind about the Huddersfield interest, and I just went and worked with one of the guys who I was playing with at Featherstone. He was a plumber, Gavin Swinson, and he let me go work with him for a bit until something sort of came about, and luckily it didn't.
I can just imagine you creeping out with a dinner and that.
Oh mate, my mum, she cried her eyes out, blessing my mum, when I told her I'd quit uni. She was adamant. She was like, rugby's not a real career, it's not gonna, it's not only short lived and stuff. And I felt good because I know how much she wanted me to do it, but thankfully it turned out all right.
That's it, yeah. So going back a little bit, mate, and was rep rugby about for you as a teenager, or how did you go about getting spotted?
So we had district teams, and we had a Wakefield district team. So you'd play against Leeds district and other surrounding areas, and that were right throughout. So probably from under 13. So I'd played in a few of those. I played for Yorkshire at under 13s as well, and then I kind of didn't really grow then. And everyone sort of around, shut up. So I was quite a late developer. So I didn't really play any rep rugby at all from then. So I got picked for Barla under 18s to go to Australia in 2004. 4 it was. Basically, I'd been playing for Fev Academy, just sort of non-contracted, and playing at the same time as playing for Stanley 18s. And we played Wigan one Friday night, and it was like when they had Chris Ashton and that playing, they had a really good team, and I was playing up wing at the time, and I had a decent game up against them. And a scout sort of asked from Wigan what I was doing and if I were contracted. So I thought there were a bit of interest there. And then Featherstone came straight to me then after that and said, look, we'll give you a contract. We'll let you go on your trip with Barla still. And then when you come back, sort of crack on. So I signed this contract, I put it in safe, and I went to Australia for 4 weeks with Barla under 18s, which were a great experience.
So did you have to fundraise it out that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, so we did a load of fundraising for club at Stanley Rangers, and there were 3 of us from club that got picked. So they did like a sportsman's dinner and stuff like that, and they raised it easy. I mean, rugby league round here is massive. Like Charleston, they did a load at Charleston for me, and Stanley were great in it as well. So we raised money pretty quickly, really, and enjoyed the trip.
Yeah, so it's like your first like bag of stash and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we got a massive kit bag, just full of gear. It was ace.
Class.
And yeah, I loved it. It was a great experience.
So how does that work, mate? Is there a few like meetups or a few days camp, and then you'd go home and then arrange to meet at airports and things like that?
Yeah. So we played a friendly game against France at Robin Park, and then we used to train on a Saturday morning at Wigan St Pat's. Carl Briscoe were one of coaches, so everything we did were over that way. So yeah, we trained for about 8 weeks all in all, and then we went, obviously played the friendly, and then we went to Australia then, and travelled around a bit,
Yeah, so before you fly out, mate, you're hitting markers here, aren't you? Probably without even realising, because you are just loving the game at that age, aren't you? And for what it can bring you. Do you notice the level change?
I think one of the things that kind of stood out when I went with Barla was, because London were like a development team, they had a couple of lads in, so they were sort of already playing academy and on contract. So Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook came with us, and Mike Warranty as well. So they looked a lot different to what I looked, you know what I mean? They're sort of obviously on weights and stuff like that. So it kind of like, and being away and being in that rugby environment, sort of training, having your time with boys, even though we were only 18, were like an experience, not having the stress of sort of everyday life and just focusing on rugby. And then we played against Aussie Schoolboys, and they just obliterated us. The team that they had were unbelievable. I mean, I've got a team sheet somewhere, but I can't remember it off my head. And I mean, a lot of them have gone on to have NRL careers, and you sort of thought, whoa, you know, am I good enough to play this? It was unbelievable how good they were. But it just made you want to do it more, you know, especially going over there and playing. It was just so exciting, and we went to a couple of NRL games over there, and just like to see how big it was. It was a special thing to see, really.
Yeah, so it's like a little taste in it, mate, of the pro life that you've been thriving for, really.
Yeah, that's it. And to be fair, I think as you get older and you sort of get a little taste of it, or it used to be like this when I was younger, it makes you want it more. You know, you sort of realise you've got to work harder and harder to get further, the further you want to go, I suppose. And the people that you meet along the way as well, I've met some great people that have give really good advice throughout, and the main thing's been to work hard, and that's all I've ever really based my career on, is working hard, and still do now. I think that's the only way really that you can get to where you want to be. I've seen many a talented player that doesn't do it and don't get very far, you know. So I think if you want it and you can experience that sort of dream and see it on the horizon, I think it's worth doing. And I definitely just threw everything into it. Like I said, I quit university off the back of a sniff, really, that they were going to be interested, and just threw it all at it, really.
You weren't ever going to be left wondering, mate, was you? You were going to give it a go, weren't
Yeah, and then especially when I sort of got that contract as well at Huddersfield. I mean, I remember first session like it was yesterday. I rang my dad after. I said, I don't think I can do this. Like, it was
Did you?
only a gym session, like, but it was so hard. They used to do this thing called a gym blitz at Huddersfield, and it was only half an hour, but it was like you do like a 200-meter row, 20 burpees, 20 clean and press, and then you'd go like 400, 18, right through to like 1,000-meter row and 10 up downs and 10 power cleans. And honestly, like it was just like
You felt the chunder bus coming.
Yeah, I'd not really even done weights properly, me at Featherstone, and that session, like, it nearly killed me. Like, it was just so hard, and they used to do it quite regular. So yeah, that were an eye opener before I'd even got to Huddersfield. Because we did it at Total Fitness in Wakefield.
So, what position did you play growing up, Dan? Because you mentioned you got signed as a winger, mate, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So I played I think like everybody, I played a bit of six when I was younger, and then as I got sort of 14, 15, I was always like a centre, really. So I played mainly in centre. I was pretty quick as a kid, and like I said, I didn't really grow then too much either until like 17. So yeah, I just stayed in centre throughout, and then when I signed at Featherstone, they had an injury pretty early on in first team, and that's how I ended up playing wing. So,
and sports that you touch on that you were mad on. So, for instance, you played in net and footy. You play in golf, which is hand-eye. You play in cricket, which is hand-eye. All spotting areas, all spotting space, all where to put yourself and put them around you. So, is all that contributing to you becoming a better overall rugby player without you knowing it as well at that age?
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer in the more that you do, it adds to the other things as well, you know. So, I mean, I love golf because it's so different to rugby, but at the same time, the concentration levels that it takes and things like that are very similar. Whilst you're on your own at golf and you're in a sort of team environment with rugby, I think you've got to be, even in the team environment, you've got to be very sure of your own thoughts and very confident of that. And golf, you know, that's very important in that as well. I think the more that you can sort of get involved in team sports as well, it definitely helps in your development. I mean, when I've done a bit of sort of work with reserves and academy, and then gone into schools and stuff, I think you can really see the difference with kids that have been involved in team sports compared to kids that haven't. I think it's such a great development tool for people as a whole, being involved in team sports. And that's not just a sort of health in terms of I'm going to be fitter, in terms of I can run 10K and stuff like that. I mean, in terms of just personal skills, you know, it really helps bring you out of your shell. It gets you comfortable in talking in groups. And I think that's really important, making people comfortable with who they are. And sports does a massive thing for that, in my opinion. And it definitely helped me, you know, throughout. I mean, even sort of moving on then sort of post full-time career, it's helped me massively, as everything that I've learned from sports, really.
Yeah. And you touched on there, mate, you had an injury quite early on. So you've been signed at Wakey Academy. Was you on like a pay as you play sort of thing, was you?
Yeah, it was sort of an old academy contract, so you could sort of play amateur still, and then, you know, you were involved with an academy setup. So it was very minimal what we got paid, but you know, you were just sort of buzzing really to be involved with a professional club.
Strolling around with your hoodie on and that.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, you can't take them off, can you? I mean, to be fair, I'm still like that most of November now when we get this new kit. But yeah, it was just class to be involved, and we played at some great grounds with academy. I mean, played at the old Boulevard and Wilderspool and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really good sort of time that I really enjoyed it. Doing weights and stuff for the first time. We had a coach called Gary Lord who played for Wakefield back in the day, and he was like an old school front rower, but he was so good with kids, and he was like a milkman at the time, and he'd sort of get everybody back at milkman and nippers off at road to field and stuff like that. And just like characters that you meet when you're a young kid, you know, it sort of gives you that excitement.
No, it is. They're the stories that you'll remember, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they
Like
are. Yeah,
jumping on
definitely.
the back of that, it's class. So what was? How did that injury come about, mate? And is that the first like decent injury you had up until that point?
Yeah, I mean, I never had an operation or anything on it, but I'd hurt my knee, and I think it was like a cartilage injury or something like that. So I was going to be out for like 8-10 weeks, and like I said, season was sort of coming to an end. And to be fair, this is another thing that I'll remember. Gary Lord actually came to my house a few weeks later just to see if I were all right. So he like came out of his way, knocked on the door at my mum and dad's house, and just to check on me and see if I were all right. And I just thought that was a really nice touch. Sometimes even now, in professional game, if you have an op, it can be like a few days before anyone sort of reaches out to you sometimes. So that sort of really stuck by me that he'd done that. And yeah, so it was like a few weeks out, and then I just went back and played amateur basically. Like the year after, we had like an under-17s team at Stanley, which not a lot of teams had at the time. So it was kind of an easier league. We sort of won everything that year, and then obviously went to under-18s, which most teams sort of back then went 16s to 18s. So I carried on and played 18s then with them.
And was interest floating about?
Not too much, really. It kind of went quiet then. I think with us playing in that under-17s league rather than 18s league, I don't think there were a lot of people sort of watching about too much. Wakefield sort of asked if I wanted to go back and play academy again, but I think what happened with me knee, I weren't really too fussed on doing that at the time. I was just enjoying myself playing. And then obviously once I started the 18s, then I'd sort of gone and had a little look around at Featherstone. And it was pretty, I mean, my grandma's a massive Fev fan. She used to go to every game and take me with her. So to sign for them, it made real sense for me. My dad's from Featherstone as well. So it was a no-brainer really. I mean, when you're a kid, you do everything to sort of make your parents proud, I suppose. And when I got that chance to go there, I just thought that'll make my dad so happy. And having watched him as a kid,
Walk around, getting dragged around by your ear isn't like having a look around.
yeah, well, yeah, and yeah, it was good fun actually. That having a look round, and Steve Lingard, he's passed away now, bless him. But he was sort of chairman that were in control, and he lived in Charleston as well, where I'm from. And I remember to this day, he says there's not a lot of money, but we can offer you some opportunities. He said, and but I mean, to me, like getting paid for playing rugby was just like, I mean, I couldn't believe you got paid to play it. To be honest, it was unbelievable,
I imagine because you're loving the game, playing with your mates for free anyway, probably having a few pints after it, which is
Yeah,
all part of the game, isn't it? The social side. So then you're probably seeing your dad's face, aren't you? Then you're probably telling your nan, and your nan's booming. And it's like, you can't really say no, mate, can you? Even if it's just 1 year, you can't
yeah,
say no.
that's it. Like, and
And
there
he'd
was
have
a
knew
few.
that as well, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
loved it. Like,
So when you're a young lad then, mate, and you're going into somewhere that's like real history and heritage like that, what feelings it you when you're walking around and someone's showing a genuine interest in you?
well, I mean, I loved it at Fev because, like I said, I'd been and watched him since being a little kid. So I'd watched like people like Brendan too, and Eddie Rombo and stuff like that, and I just had a massive excitement about going, and I'd still really been watching them, and just till before I went there. So, like, he likes of Stuart Dickens and Ian Tonks and people like that. Like, from watching them to sort of training with them in like really click of the fingers, it were awesome. And it was still at a time really then where you weren't a first teamer until you were in first team. So it was quite daunting as well at the same time. Obviously still quite a young kid, and there were a lot of sort of seasoned professionals really in that team. So it could have been scarier than it was, but they were all really good with me, to be fair. Ian Tonks were great. Stu Dickens, when he came back, were brilliant. And it was just a really good set of lads. And coach Gary Price as well. He were really good, quite demanding, even though young, but taught me a lot about the game in a really short space of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it does change then, mate, doesn't it? The little, like you spoke about the intricacies of uni. You've got to see the dark arts of rugby league at that level now, aren't you? And you've got to learn the little tricks and.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it was such a physical league, that league. I mean, you had OKR in there at the time, who had an absolutely unbelievable team. And you'd be travelling to like Barrow and Workington, and they were all like big Cumbrians, you know, it were like old school. And like getting on of a young kid like me now, I suppose, if I see a young kid and they're just making the debut or whatever, I want to try and give them a bit, you know. And that's what they were all like with me. They used to try and batter me all the time. It were hard, like it were a great sort of introduction to the real world of rugby, I suppose.
So them big middles waiting for an exit set from that winger over there.
Yeah, especially up that hill at Fev as well. I used to try and save it for downhill really, but they shimmy me in.
Yeah. So you touched on before, mate. You reckon you played because of a bit of a shortage. So what does that chat go like, and how do you go home and tell everyone that you're about to make your debut?
Yeah, well, it was Matty Ray who got injured. I think he'd played Super League for Wakefield before, year before. So I kind of weren't really going to get in front of him. I was sort of a backup, and I think he did his knee or something like that. And I'd played a couple of games sort of off bench, just getting me a bit of experience. And I think when Matty did it, I came on, and then Price, who was coach at the time, like he just said, "Look, you're going to be starting from now on, really. It's your spot, and you've got to sort of keep it. But you know, you're a first teamer now." And it was nice. I loved it. It were a really good time for Championship rugby as well. Like Cass were in that league, so we had sort of derbies, Fedcast derbies, and they were unbelievable. Sort of playing on wing as well, right next to fans, and you know, getting that full atmosphere. It was quality to play.
What you call it, a full atmosphere, yeah.
Oh yeah, well, I've seen some stuff. Obviously, I've played in both Fevcast and Wakeycast,
Yeah.
and you know, it gets quite volatile at times, but always good fun.
Yeah. And so a bit like finals and stuff, mate, derby games aren't as common as people might think, are they? So what's a week building up to that like?
Oh, it's exciting. I mean, obviously, when you live in that sort of area as well, you know, you go out, do your shopping. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't doing much shopping back then because my mum and dad were doing it for me. Well, like when I went on to sort of Wakefield, and you know, obviously, I'd go to the supermarket shop, and everyone would be. I mean, even now, like last week when they played each other. Like everyone's talking about it. There's a real buzz, you know, and they want your opinion on it, and it's great. I love that. I love that side of rugby league, that players are accessible, and I love that as a kid. You know, that I could go and I could talk to a player and stuff, and that's why I've always sort of, you know, I've never shunned that. I always try and give them time to people, and you know, be right with folk and have a chat with them, and I love it. I love their enthusiasm for it. And you know, you'd get a few beers bought in pub after if you got the win. You get slagged off a little bit.
Drink them though, I was gonna say.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not the best drinker, me, like so. But yeah, you'd get slagged a bit if you didn't get the win, or more modern nowadays, you'd get hammered on Twitter and stuff like that. But again, it's all temporary, innit? The good, the bad. But yeah, I love the derbies. Any big game like that were always sort of fun to play in. And yeah, like I said, I've seen some good sights. One that sticks in my mind, just like so vividly. We played Cassett, were a night game, and it was freezing. And Richie Mathers had just come to Wakefield, and he scored a try, and someone wanged a red hot coffee at him, and it hit him. And because it was so cold, it was like dry ice. It like just steam just blew up, and it was like this unbelievable picture of him with just a cloud of steam around him.
So do you know what I love about it as well, mate? Is we've all been that kid with the autograph book, haven't we? Like at players' entrance and that. And it's nice that like you've not forgot that side of the game.
Yeah,
It's like
well,
I think I've seen something about that Arsenal mascot, and not one of
oh
them says,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
they've all got their earphones in." But like
yeah.
you watch like any more rugby league than union, right? Because that's what we all watch, don't we? But it's like everyone's saying, "All right, pictures took with them," and you meet all the players, not one or two, and I think that's where we've got it right, mate. Playing rugby, haven't we? We've got that human element and touch. We're
Yeah,
relatable.
and you've got to make it memorable, haven't you? And there's a lot of
Yeah.
competition nowadays as well. So, like predominantly back in my day, kids from this area played rugby. Football weren't really as big in the area as it is now. And I think, to give kids that opportunity and that access like we can in rugby league, I think that's something that really puts us ahead, if anything. You can really make an impact on people with that. And, at York, we have sort of 20 mascots every week that come out with both teams. I always, ask the name, can you see your parents, or who you ain't stand, give them a wave, make it exciting for them. And they're memories that sort of last. And even if they don't, want to go on and be a player, they're probably going to want to come back and watch. And they're the future, aren't they? Whether they're sort of playing or watching, that's what's going to keep the game going. So I think engaging kids is such a big thing. I know a lot when I was sort of just starting out, there'd always be free tickets for kids. You take an adult with you, they don't come round schools. I don't think people do that as much anymore. But I think it's such a good idea that just to get kids engaged.
No, definitely, mate. So, and that year or that couple of years you were at Fev, weren't all plain sailing, was it, mate? You seen both ends of professional sport basically. So, how was it at one end, and then coming back up, and that's when you really were noticed, mate, wasn't it? When you've helped get promotion. So, how is it when you're under the pump, and what's an atmosphere like at the club when you're feeling it?
Do you know what? It was really strange because I just glided straight through it. It was like I was on a cloud. It was like, honestly, it's really cliche, but it was like I was living a dream, really. So the relegation didn't really affect me too much. So, I mean, it did in the fact that people left and, Gary Price, the coach, left. So I was obviously really disappointed about that. But at the same time, it was still sort of the dream to me. I was playing rugby, and I had a contract for next year, which weren't really it weren't in my mind, but it sort of took away that sort of stress of it, I suppose. When you're older and you're sort of earning a bit of extra money to look after your family and, pay your bills and stuff like that, it is a real stress. And whilst I was disappointed every time we lost, the relegation didn't affect me too much. I knew I'd just be playing again, and I was confident that the club would go back to where it was. The players that the club brought in for that sort of National 2, which it was at the time, were unbelievable quality. Obviously, there were sort of Celtic Crusaders in the league at the time, so there were still good teams in that division, and Workington and teams like that. It was still really competitive. So it was kind of a good learning curve, really, to drop down to that and then carry on. But we had a great team that year, and if the team wasn't as good, I probably when I look back at videos, I think, how the hell did I get signed full time? Because it was a completely different game. We had a great team. I had a centre inside me called John Whittle. He sort of played Super League with Wakefield before. We had Tommy Hockey and
He
Jamie
come to
Field.
witness, I think, John Whittle, didn't he?
Did, yeah. So we had Johnny, we had Tommy Hockey who played Super League, Jamie Field who played loads of Super League, Stu Dickens came back, Andy Kane, I think Kane he might have played at Widnes for a bit as well. So we just had a proper quality team, and I mean, I scored a load of tries that year, which obviously sort of makes you stand out. I got the dream team in that division as well, and nominated for Young Player of the Year. So it was just like, I loved it. It was like,
In the dream, literally,
yeah, just scoring tries every week.
Playing Rugby League World every week when it was out.
Yeah, that's it. I used to go out, get paper, see what my rating was in Rugby League Weekly and that. And like, it was just a really good time, really, to be involved with club. It was when sort of Mark Campbell took over as well, so he just become involved. So I know Mark really well. And yeah, it sort of culminated in the final at Headingley when we played Oldham to get sort of promoted.
Yeah. And do you know when the pressure's off a little bit, maybe when like your fate's sealed either way, is that when you can not only like relax and start enjoying it, but do you enjoy each other's company off the field a bit more then as well?
I think part-time's a bit different because you sort of live in two lives, really. So you sort of go to rugby, you come home and you worry about work or you worry about family. Whereas when you're full-time, it's everything. So you'll play on a Sunday. If you win, you'll sail through that week happy as Larry. You everything that you do, you enjoy yourself after a game with boys. You might get an extra day off in week and get treated, so you can have a game of golf or whatever. And you spend more time socially together. If you lose, other end of the scale, you go home, you're sulking. You've got monk on with dog and missus, and it lasts till Friday week after when you're getting ready for the next game. So yeah, I think full time when you get your wins and pressure's off, or you've made playoffs, or especially when there were no relegation, you can enjoy yourself socially more. But part time's a little bit more difficult, really, because obviously you play on a Sunday, and you can't really go out and celebrate too much because most people are getting up for work on a Monday.
Yeah, well, trying to.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah. So when the interest from Huddersfield comes around, mate, how does the chat go with Fev? And do they get like a compensation fee or anything, or is it just a contract expiry?
Yeah, so basically my contract was expiring at the end of the year, and it was a friend of mine I went to school with, a girl called Nicola, and I was at a house party at her house, a family party, and mum's partner at the time were friends with Martin Shuttleworth, the agent, and he just said to me, "Oh, my friend Martin's." I don't know how he really knew our friends with him, but he said, "Oh, he's got you a deal at Huddersfield. They're really interested in signing you, so he'd like to meet up with you if you want to." So, I mean, like, to go full time, it was unbelievable sort of opportunity, really. So yeah, my contract basically run out at Featherstone. I was 21, so there were no sort of like Bosman or anything at that time. So I just waited, and then once my contract was sort of up, I went and met with Huddersfield and signed that first deal.
I was like football manager veterans, talking all the right language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, how does that chat go, mate? And do you notice, no disrespect to Fev, but a step up in professionalism right from the talks to like venues and equipment and stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, first thing was I'd never had an agent before, so when I was dealing with Featherstone, I'd just gone in with my old man, had a quick chat with him. Didn't really know whether you could negotiate or anything. It was just like, here's what we've got, and you're sort of happy with it. And to be fair, I was happy with it. I was getting paid to play rugby. Obviously, the Huddersfield thing, they'd sort of approached me through Martin. So I signed with Martin straight away. I got on with him really well. So he was sort of my agent. And yeah, went through, had a little chat about the contract and stuff with them. I got shown around the stadium, gym, where they train and stuff like that. And obviously, it's a really impressive stadium, Huddersfield. And yeah, just had a quick chat with John Sharp, who was the coach at the time as well, sort of what he saw in me, what he wanted from me. And yeah, you kind of realise then that it is serious. It's going to be a job. You're going to have to sort of jump through these hoops to get to where you want to be. But it didn't really daunt me too much. I knew how much I wanted to do it and how much of an opportunity it was. I think being from the area that I'm from and how big rugby is, and not many people from round my way sort of get the opportunity to do it. So I was really proud, really, just to sort of get the chance more than anything at first. And they could have offered me $5,000 and I'd have probably gone for it, because my mum and dad would have helped me out through it. They didn't have a lot, both work and stuff like that. But I knew if I'd have gone there and they'd have said, "Oh, we'll give you $5,000," and it'd have cost me $10,000 a year to travel, my mum and dad would have sort of supported me in jumping at it. So it was a bit more than that. Not loads more, but it was an easy choice. So yeah, I signed like a 3-year deal with them, or 2-year deal to start with. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do them talk? Like, is it just done within a visit, like a contract? Because like we were joking then about footy manager and that, because it bounces back. But some of these contracts that footy players do, they're in talks for like a year. Like
Yeah.
I never fathom how it can take that long.
I mean, I've always been pretty quick, to be fair, because I just like to be straight to the point. So, I mean, if they put a good deal in front of you, that you do it pretty quickly, don't you?
Imagine.
Yeah, but I mean that first deal was pretty quick. It was a case of I met Martin, I met the club, they sent the contract, I signed it. We're all done within a week, really. I have had contracts which have gone on slightly longer, but never sort of dragging on for more than a month at the latest. And that's always been a case of, to be fair, the longer the ones that have gone on have been a case of, do we want to keep you? We would need to have a think of if we want to keep you, and that that, which is a different thing, really. So towards back end of my career at Wakefield, I sort of, obviously I weren't bothered about going anywhere else, so I always wanted to stay there. So I was happy to sort of wait really on the contract. So my last couple, I were always signing 1-year deals, and I'd think a few of them I didn't sign really till sort of September, October. So I had to wait on Michael a couple of times, but he always came through for me.
So you're at Huddersfield, mate, and if positionally wise, have you signed as a centre, or are you?
I signed as a winger, so I played
Right.
pretty much all my rugby at Feb. I played on wing, so I signed as a winger. Trained for first pre-season as a winger, and then I played a friendly against Hull FC away, like on a Friday night. And Adam Dykes, that Aussie halfback, I came on for like last 20 minutes, and obviously on wing, you don't really want to be on bench. And I came on, as soon as I came on, he spiral bombed me. I dropped that one. It bombed me again.
Cheers.
I dropped another, and I was a bit shaky for full 20 minutes, to be fair. And I think that might have even been last time I played on wing. John Sharp got me in office in week, and he said, I think he'd be a good back rower. You remind me a bit of like Lee Gilmore when he was younger, decent foot speed and stuff like that. And again, like just being in that environment, I was happy really to just go with whatever. So they formulated a plan to turn me into a back rower, involved mainly playing in reserve team for sort of that first season. And God, it were an hard transition. It was so hard, like just on the lungs. I mean, I've never felt like that really in a game, playing in back row. And at that time, reserves were really sort of a strong competition. So you could drop like 5 or 6 first teamers back. So every week you'd be playing against a few sort of Super League players. And I played a couple of games with John Sharp. Then I came off the bench in that first season a couple of times. He played me in the middle and in back row, sort of come on, just run around, go lead a little bit. So I got sort of a few opportunities while Sharpie were there. Scored against Catalans in one of my first games. and then John got the sack, and Paul Anderson and Kieran Patel took over. And I played I think I played about 10, 12 games or something like that then, my first season. Got a decent run, and had a good crack at it, really. So, yeah, all in all, it was quite a positive first year, really.
And Lungs, with the transition in position, did you ever feel overawed by anything, Dan, or are you still riding that wave at this point?
Yeah, I mean, training were unbelievably hard. Like, the pre-season was just something like I'd never trained like that, really. I mean, we had the odd sort of hard session at Featherstone where Gary Price would just go nuts on you and, absolutely beast you for dropping a ball or something. But having like a formulated plan of, a pre-season where you're getting flogged sort of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the skill in between and the weights as well. It were all just so different to what I've done, but I enjoyed it because it was new and I was getting paid to play rugby. So it never really bothered me too much. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you'd have brought me off that field after some of them sessions and said, "Do you love it?" I'd have said no. Of course I would do. It were hard. It were really hard. But I just knew I wanted to do it, and I had an opportunity to do it. And the good thing was I always had a 2-year deal, so I had time on my side really to sort of prove that I was good enough. So.
Right, and when you've been and you played in them attritional leagues, I imagine when you're coming up to the levels you're going to get to, the collisions maybe aren't quite as big, are they? Because you're looking at speed and technicality, really, aren't you? So your body's already toughened to the big collisions, hasn't it? Regardless of your position.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously an intensity to the collisions, but you are trained for it a lot more. Obviously, the majority of players now, you look through Super League, they're pretty much similar size from 1 to 13, really. Obviously your front row is a bit bigger, but everyone's sort of built, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you are sort of ready for that. I mean, one thing you can't sort of get around is getting hit by someone with good technique. And if you get hit by one of them, I think it don't matter how much training you do. If they get you from a blind side or you don't see them, it's knocking stuffing out here. I've had a couple of them in my time. Not too many, thankfully, but they get you regard. Yeah.
So when you've had that taste, mate, what's that second pre-season like?
Well, I had different goals then that second season, so I wanted to sort of establish myself then as a first team player, and they showed quite a bit of faith in me for that second season at the start of it. So it was really exciting. We'd made some good signings as well, so we had some great players around. And again, you still, even though you've played a few games with them, you're still looking at these new players when they come in, like Aussies and stuff like that, and it's still very much when you first get to them. But the rugby players are all very similar. They're all good guys that very open with you, and a lot of them senior players that were in at that time were great with me. I think they understood where I'd come from, sort of what my transition was as well, and they sort of give me a lot of help. Players like Stephen Wild and David Hodgson, they played for Great Britain, but they always had a lot of time for the younger kids and helping them, and ultimately that helps them as well because the team's stronger. But they had a great culture in that sort of thing at Huddersfield, and you can see with players like McGillivray and Leroy Cudjoe, I think the work that David Hodgson especially did with them was sort of massive, really, and definitely helped them on the way.
Yeah. I think fans and media look into the next question more than you guys probably, but did squad numbers ever matter to you, mate?
I mean, everyone says it's just a number, but I think if you've got a starting number and you lose it, you'd be pretty disappointed. Or I would be anyway.
Yeah, well, at least you're honest, because I would beat myself.
Yeah, and it's whilst it doesn't pick the team, it's still nice to have that starting number on your back. So
it's an indicator, Danny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's a tough thing for a coach to do so early in a season, is that as well? Because obviously you're not sort of in pre-season. They've not really had a chance to formulate a judgment on anyone. So it is really all sort of in their what is in their head as such. So it's what they're thinking the team's going to look like. That's the only way they can do it, really. And so yeah, if I were ever a starting number and I'd have lost it, I would have been really disappointed. I've had a few sort of higher numbers, but I've tended to go wherever I've been. I've started high and come down, and I've always liked that. Yeah, so I've had all sorts. I've 32, 17, 12, and that's about it, I think. Yeah.
No, because it is massively read into outside of a team, isn't it? And it is an indicator, but it's not a definite, is it? Because a lot can happen like that, mate, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, with you only have to, you can look at any sort of thing, and it can change pretty quickly. You know, I think if you looked at a team, you know, if you looked at the full set of fixtures, you'd rarely see a team that have got 1 to 13 out starting the game. You know, so yeah, I mean, whilst you know, in your head, I think it's just a human sort of nature kind of thing that you want one of them starting 13 shirts, but.
Yeah.
At the same time, I know if I'm number 12, I know that I'm not guaranteed to be playing. It's just nice to have it. I wouldn't expect to be in that team just because I'm number 12, really.
Yeah. No, that's fair, mate. And how was it at Huddersfield? So there was a Challenge Cup final there that you let me know you missed out on. There's a loan move, isn't there? So we'll touch on the loan first, if that's all right. And obviously the dual reg has come about since you've well and truly established yourself. So how did you see a loan move? Did you see it as an opportunity, or did you see it as a bit of a kick in the face?
Um, a, an opportunity more than anything. I weren't disappointed about it. I'd done my ACL, so I've been out for like 6 months. The club had signed David Farlow, who'd played sort of international and played a lot of it in RL games. They had Luke O'Donnell, and I think Lee Gilmore at the time. So the back row were quite congested already at Huddersfield, and I'd been out for a period of time. So it was when Huddersfield wanted to sign Danny Brough, and they were sort of desperate to get that done. I think Wakefield wanted a player in return, and you know it kind of worked for all parties really. So off I went in Martin Shuttleworth's car again for a meeting at Wakefield. And it made sense for me. I lived at top of hill, you know, I can roll down there, save me a bit of petrol. And Wakefield looked after me. And I think we only won 2 games that year that I was there. But honestly, I loved every minute of it. It were unbelievable. Like just the camaraderie and the family feel of the club. I mean, Huddersfield's a great club. I love my time there, but it's a big stadium. They don't pack it out because it's obviously sort of 40, 50,000. And from that to going to Wakefield, whilst they didn't have the facilities, the gym's cold and stuff like that, I just got a real sense of rugby league again and a real feel for like a family club. And John Keir were brilliant. Loved working with him. And yeah, it was just a great set of lads that year. Obviously, Jace Dimitri were there, who you know were a really good captain and leader. And they had some really good young players from Wakefield, like Dale Ferguson and people like that. So it was just a really good blend of experience and youth. And the main thing was there were no egos there at all. And whilst we didn't have a really successful year, I did really love it. It were a great sort of season personally, really, just for the enjoyment factor of it.
So if someone's going to throw a coffee at you, you want it to hit you, don't you? Not by throwing it from the gods to earn it on this field.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I get them nice and close.
So when that ACL happened, mate, just a couple of things around that. So first off, do you know it's serious at the time? Secondly, is what goes through your head when you get the diagnosis?
And so, Yeah, it was week before Wembley, and we had St Helens away at Knowsley Road, and Nathan Brown, coach at the time, he'd rested a few, but obviously needed a few to play as well. And he'd sort of said to me, "Look, you're going to be involved, but you're going to be involved in the cup final as well." And I was happy with that. It didn't bother me too much, and yeah, I took a carry out of yardage, and I just sidestepped, and I just fell over. Really, it didn't hurt too much until Kieran Cunningham smoked me on the floor. There was no sympathy from that. But yeah, I remember it really well, and I couldn't get up, so it weren't like an intense pain, like you'd expect from something like that. So I got off put me on bed in changing rooms, and had a look at it, and I could see the worry in everybody else's face. Whilst it wasn't hurting me, I could tell that it was probably something serious. And Doc at times said it could just be a sort of cartilage or something. I think they, back of their heads, they knew that it was Wembley next week, and they didn't really want to hit me with it all at once. So yeah, then they got me in for sort of to see a specialist. I went to see Steve Bollen, who's a really highly sort of decorated knee surgeon, worked on Man United players and stuff like that. And yeah, he confirmed it pretty quickly. So it was. I knew within 3 days really that I wasn't going to be playing at Wembley, which was quite tough to take. I had about 50 tickets from friends and family all booked and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was a really tough time. Obviously, like I said before, you used to pretend you're playing in Challenge Cup final and that when you're a kid. So it was something that I was really looking forward to. And yeah, it came crashing down pretty quickly, really. But what I will say on that is Nathan Brown, who was coach at the time, were absolutely unbelievable with me. So there were me and there were Danny Sculthorpe as well, who he were on loan. So he was cup tied, I think, was Scully. So he couldn't play in final either. And Brownie made sure that we went down with team. So you go like 4 days before, you stay in a really nice sort of posh hotel in middle of the countryside for a few days. And Brownie took us down. He gave me and Scully his own room. And he said, "Look, lads, I want you to enjoy it as much as you can. Have a few beers on a night. Just don't sort of interrupt lads in the prep and that." And it really involved us, and it made it a bit easier, to be fair, the way that he was with us.
Was it Penny Hill you stayed at?
Can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's a similar
I
one.
had Michael on the other day, yeah, and he reckons they stayed at Penny Hill, but I'm not sure whether that was when you went. Were England staying or the Rugby Union side?
I think that's where they all stay. I think they stay at the same spot, yeah.
And it's like 15 quid for a butty.
Yeah. Well,
don't want to ask how much a pint was.
None of them would have been paying. To be fair, he chucked a bit in, did Brownie, like you're a good bloke like that. He used to look after it, boy.
Yeah. No, and for a young lad as well, mate, for like your first showpiece event, which it was going to be on a big scale. So what's the club like? Because obviously it's changed around the mental health, hasn't it? It's always been a big thing, but it's been overlooked in the past. Like, no one to blame. It's just how life was, mate, wasn't it? It's a generational thing.
Yeah.
So what was the crack for you mentally when that comes about? Or is it a bit of a bonus that you're going to be around a lot longer?
Yeah, well, the good thing was, like, I just signed like a 4-year deal, literally a couple of weeks before I did my knee. So that kind of made things a little bit easier. But yeah, it was difficult. I won't lie. It was probably the hardest point of my career. At the time, we used to train like early morning when you were in rehab at Huddersfield. So you wouldn't really sort of be around the team too much, which worked great for sort of people that had probably, had an hammy strain and they needed to be back in a couple of weeks. But for me, we were out for like 6 to 9 months, whatever it was sort of expected to be. It was really difficult. And yeah, I went out, got pissed quite a bit in Wake. It's easy to sort of do around there. And, spent too much time, drinking. But it was just hard. You don't really feel like part of the team when you're sort of injured, especially for a long period of time like that. And my release were always playing. And like that's what I find now as well, is through COVID and stuff like that. It's rugby league and playing's a release for me. It gets rid of stresses, like everyday stresses and stuff like that. And to not be able to do that for such a period of time were really difficult.
Yeah. And when you're coming through the rehab, Dan, and you're in them stages, is there a little bit of fear there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like your first 3 months with an ACL, you've got like a really high chance of re-rupturing it. I think after that, then it's quite a low chance. So to be honest, I flew through it, all the rehab and stuff. I had one sort of setback where they let me go away for a couple of weeks, which were really nice of them, to be fair, because the time I'd done it, my rehab sort of went through pre-season and the off-season. So they let me go away before the off season so I could sort of crack on with my rehab. And I went to Dominican with one of my old mistresses, and she didn't mind a drink, to be fair. So we had a few pints and that in Dominican and ate the food hard. And I'd put about 5 kilo on or something when I got back. And the conditioner at the time, he were like, he's the conditioner there again now. He's Greg Brown, and he's like, honestly, he loves it. He's a sadist, mate. And he absolutely smashed me like for about a week. I could have cried half at sessions they were giving me, but he did a great job on my rehab, and I played after 6 months. So now it's like 9. They don't even let you touch a field really till 9 months now. So yeah, they sent me to Wakey after 6 months, and when I got there, John Key were like, "How do you feel about playing tonight, Cock, against Warrington?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" I'd not done any contact or all. Did a bit in training, and then played day after against Warrington. So yeah, it was tough. Really hard time having that sort of injury. And that's why now in teams, when I've been involved with them after and I see young kids that have them injuries, I make sure that I check in on them regularly. Tom Johnston, for example, he's had a couple at Wakefield, and always sort of tried to keep an eye on them, because I know how sort of lonely it can get in your own head when you've got an injury like that. It's difficult.
So, and then that first game back, with it coming thick and fast like that basically literally just come on you. Is that a blessing as well, because you don't get much thinking time?
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to worry about it, to be fair. Played in back row. I think it was Ben Westwood opposite me. I had some good ding dongs with Benny in my career, and people like that aren't going to take it easy on you either. So you're straight back in mixer really, and yeah, we got beat, but I was just happy to get through game really, and injury free, back playing after hardest sort of time in my career really.
Yeah. So at the end of that spell at Wakey on loan, mate, you go back and what's the chat when you get back?
So I went back, and club were really good with me, to be fair. They were sort of happy just to sort of crack on. And then I think it was in pre-season. Nathan Brown were always brilliant. Just dead open, always happy to have an honest conversation. And he just said, "Look, we've got a lot of back rowers here. Wakefield are interested in bringing you back." I think Wakefield at the time when it turned out for me to go, it was sort of after pre-season. I think it might have been season after. But Brownie were always really open with me about it. So I played a few games. And then when it come to leaving, he just said, "Look, I've got you a deal at Wakefield if you want it. They're interested. We'll look after you as a club in terms of, what you've got left on your contract, things like that." And it were an easy decision for me. I'd met my wife who I'm with now. I just got a new house and stuff like that that's in Wakefield, and it just all tied in perfect, really. And when I had a chat with Rich Hagar then, who was taking over at Wakefield, I had a really good relationship with Rich from off the bat, and I knew that's sort of what I wanted to do. So I ended up leaving it at the end of that season.
Yeah. With you not moving about very much, mate, the next question really, you can only go off what other players have said to you, but that good relationship you had with Nathan Brown and how honest and open he was, is that quite widespread in rugby league?
I don't think so. I mean, it's always a difficult thing when you're sort of telling someone that they're not wanted. So I think, like probably in any sort of business, I think there's going to be people that are good at it and people that are not too good at it or shy away from it. I've seen both sides of it, really. But I think the ones that are upfront about it are always, the ones that sort of deal with it best and get the best results from it. I think players are quite understanding that it's a free-flowing market in rugby league generally. I think the main thing that players want is the chance to sort of explore and get something else. I think when you leave it till last minute, it's difficult then for a player to, have any sort of strength in the market or, find something else a lot of the time. So I've always found with coaches that are upfront about it, they tend to sort of get on and you go your own way with a smile and an handshake. To be fair, the majority of people I've dealt with have been really good with it, especially personally. Whenever I've left anywhere, it's always been on good terms. So yeah, it's. I think it's just an individual thing more than anything. That.
Right, mate, and without knowing it, maybe if you developed into a leader enough to, because the next thing is you're announced as a captain, mate, aren't you? And is that something you've naturally got, Dan, or is it something you've developed without knowing?
Yeah, I think probably developed without knowing, really. I think it was never something I imagined that I'd be doing. I think obviously going from my time at Huddersfield, where I'd been sent on loan, gone back, not played too many games, to then going to Wakefield. And initially I was the vice captain initially, but the way in which Rich did it kind of give you confidence that you'd be able to do it, because he just put it to a player's vote. So he said, who do you want to be a captain to, lads? And we were a new group, or 17 of us that had come in together that year. And we actually voted for someone who wasn't even here yet, which was crazy. So we voted for Steve Southern, who he played for Newcastle in NRL, and he had a really good reputation. And we all voted for Bluey, so I think that probably said more about all us that were there at training than probably him.
Pointing to the empty seat.
Yeah. So we give it to Bluey. And then when Bluey eventually got over, he did it for a couple of months and, had a few sort of issues, personally. And he just decided that it was best for the team and himself that he didn't sort of take the captaincy on anymore. And Rich just said to me, would you be happy to do it? And I was buzzing, really. It were, like I said, it was something that I'd not imagined that I'd ever do, but to captain my hometown club were brilliant. I loved it. And I think it brought a bit out of me as well.
Yeah. And I imagine a big buy-in as well from a fan base. It's all well and good, no offence to Steve, a good name, NRL solid, does all the right things at the right time, says the right things when they need saying, of no doubt. That's what a part of a good leader. But when you can see it's one of your own, and the work rate that you bring with you as well, Dan.
Yeah, I think they saw the pride in me as well, really. That I'm from the area, really liked the club, and I think they loved that they had a sort of local captain again. I think they really bought into Jace Demetriou, where he were at the club for a long time, meant a lot to the fans. And I think to have someone sort of go after that's from the area, did mean a lot to them. And they definitely give me a lot of respect, a lot of love whilst they were doing it as well. I got the odd spray, but apart from that, it was a really enjoyable experience. And when you're a captain of a Super League club, especially your own hometown one, and you're leading players around that have done a lot more than you, and there've been places that you haven't done, things you haven't. It makes you work harder. And like I said before, I've always sort of based my game on trying to work hard. But to be the captain, you have to work hard all the time, and that's training. You have to do everything, even if it's things like a social thing. You've got to be there, and it is full on. It's all the time. You go home, you're thinking about it. What can I do? How can I help him? Because I'm a very sort of a personal person as well. So it meant a lot to me how people were away from the game, how they were away from the club, were they happy, and things like that. So if any new Aussie guys came in, I always tried to take them for a coffee with my wife and their partners, make sure that they knew where they were going and things like that. Make sure that they settled in all right, and that kind of thing. So I kind of took over my life a little bit for a while.
No, I can imagine, mate. Yeah, because literally, you have to be on socials. You have to be the meet and greet fella at the training ground, at the changing rooms, don't you? And so when them players have an issue, Dan, it does it come through you and then you go upstairs with it? Whether that be a home issue, a playing issue, family, back where they've come from, stuff. Does everything filter through you? Tickets, because I imagine you get bombarded for tickets and stuff.
The worst ones, bonuses like just Challenge Cup bonuses and that. Kyle Amo at worst for it. Bloody hell. You go in and, Kyle would send you in for 10 and they'd offer you 20 and then Kyle would want 50. But he'd never go in and say it. That was issue. But yeah, like everything. I mean, I think to be a good leader, you've got to get a good read on the situation a lot of the time. So, I mean, I'd obviously keep everything private if people wanted to do that. If they needed, me to have a word with anybody, I'd have a word with them. One good thing about Rich Agar was, because he brought that team together, I think he had a really good sort of understanding of everyone personally as well in that team. I think he cared a lot for them as well, and had a real sort of, probably a sense of sort of fatherhood over that team because he brought everybody in. So he was very understanding of what everybody needed in that team, and probably more so than myself. And I think he did a great job of looking after, a lot of people in that squad. We were kind of all sort of released or not wanted anywhere that he brought in. A few players that had issues elsewhere and stuff like that. But he really got everyone to buy into the sort of the ethos, and it weren't really even about the club or the area. It was just about the bubble of the team. And I suppose at the time that team could have had any sort of badge on it really, but we bought into each other, and that created its own relative success really from where they'd come from.
All this shit when you're under your own sticks quite a lot in it, mate. It's that togetherness really.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, that team that year is probably the most together team that I've ever played in really. That first 2 seasons we had some real big names like, Tim Smith, Ali Lauati, and then we had some real grafters and effort people like Danny Washbrook and Ben Cockayne. It was a real good mix of sort of grubby folk and quality, if you know what I mean. So, Ben,
you've got to have it though, haven't you?
Yeah, but Ben Cockayne's probably the biggest scrub that I've played with. He won't mind me saying that, but what he did was he got an extra 10% out of people because you were scared because he'd put it on your toes if you did something wrong. And, that's something that's probably becoming rarer and rarer in the game now, I think, is someone that's not scared to give you a spray, but to give you a spray in the right way.
And do you know what? I messaged Benny about coming on, right? And I think I was too structured for him. He's like, it's going to bore me to death, that. I was like, oh, fair enough. But he's honest, isn't he? You can't beat a bit of honesty, Dan. But he was like, that's a bit serious for me, mate. But thanks for asking, basically. It's like, yeah, no worries. But and his versatility probably helped us out in a big way as well, because he weren't scared of mixing it at all, was he? Regardless of size and what name you had on your back of your chest.
I mean, he played on wing on team sheet, but he did what he wanted. He was buzzing all over shop with Benny. And yeah, he was a great character, like socially as well for the team. Helped all younger lads come out of the shell and stuff like that. And yeah, just a real tough player. Like if he weren't massive, but if you needed to carry out a dummy half out of your own end, he'd always be there. He'd be into middles all the time about being aggressive in the contact and stuff. And I think a lot of time it's hard for a winger to say stuff like that, but because Benny was so tough and played so tough, he got a lot out of people, and he was very skillful as well. I think a lot of people see the irritating grubby Ben Cockayne, but he's a very skillful player and very smart as well.
Yeah. No, it's one thing talking the talk, but obviously he walked it as well, didn't he? He walked the walk as well. But you've been around enough players to know, like a diamond in the rough sort of thing, don't you, mate? And clubs like when we were in Super League Witness and in yourselves, you need to find them, don't you? Which it's funny you've not signed for Witness yet, with the amount of links you've got to us. Never say never, mate, in it, but
that
no,
4G picture no good for me.
I weren't going to bring it up there. But yeah, it's when you get into that stage where you're having to sort of manage a team on and off the field. Obviously, you're aiding whoever your head coach is, aren't you, with that leadership role? Is it with one eye on the future, Dan? Or was you always very much focused on the job at hand?
Yeah, I never really thought about sort of coaching or anything like that, or sort of anything too much beyond the sort of rugby side of it. Really, to be honest, I always used to say to myself, "I'm doing best job in rugby. Like, why would I want to do another one? But sort of as I come to the back end of my career at Wakefield, I was sort of started coaching reserves, and I was doing sort of pathways as well. So doing reviews for like all the juniors right through the club. And then I'd done that for about 4 or 5 months, and then obviously COVID hit, so all the youth stuff didn't really come back. So that job sort of went, and then obviously I sort of signed as assistant and player at York last year, and I think having that, what I wanted to do was I wanted to sample something else. I didn't want to go straight from full-time rugby into full-time coaching, have that not easy transition, but just that transition that's sort of seamless. I wanted to try something else and make sure that's what I wanted to do if I did want to do that. It was never really in my head until I was kind of away from the game a little bit, playing part-time but working as well. And then I just got a real desire. I just think, why waste what you've got? You've had a great career in rugby. You've got a lot of experience to pass on to other people, and whatever sort of level that being, whether it be as a sort of assistant and helping out with younger end, or whether it eventually lead on to being a head coach. Why not have a crack at that? And that's something that I've now taken steps towards doing. So,
Especially the path you've took, Dan. Like you've played elite most of your career, like from like 14, haven't you? But you've had them little tasters to come back up, so you know what that level is, and you know what that level is. You're relatable right through the pyramid, so it'd be a waste for you to step away and no one come and get you.
Yeah, it's yeah, and that's something that I've thought of. I mean, there were a time I did like my level 2 counselling, and I was looking at sort of going into player welfare side of things. But I think coaching, it does excite me a little bit more than that. I think. I think counselling and player welfare, and that's great, but I'm the kind of person that gets bogged down a little bit by other people's problems, and that I don't mean that in like a negative way. I do try and sort of help. I love to try and help people and stuff like that, but it gets on my mind and kind of leads me into a bit of a spiral as well, if you know what I mean. So whilst the welfare thing I think is really important and the people do a great job, I think coaching is probably a bit better fit for me, really.
And that was it, mate. You're not going to get your ball in your hand in an office, are you?
No.
I can well imagine you with the bag of balls and like the spiker cones and that. That is just you, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll go back a little bit, mate, and the obvious question when we speak about Wakey and the likes of us and Salford, and that is that £1 million game. So you've been involved in one, and I can't imagine it's very nice, mate. Like, not even the week of, I imagine when you're in and around it, it must be horrible.
Yeah, it were crazy, really. Like, I'd done my shoulder as well, like 9 weeks before. So I'd had a shoulder recon, and they're normally like a 12-week injury. But obviously, I knew that we were probably going to be there or thereabouts in that £1 million game. So it was just a real like frantic time at the club. Like Brian Smith were in. He were coaching, and Brian had some sort of great ideas and really tried to sort of help everyone individually. He'd do things a little bit different to people that I'd worked with before. But he was a great character, Brian. And looking back now, I can have some good laughs thinking about the stuff. But at the time, it was very stressful because obviously we weren't playing well, and I knew that I had to sort of come back and try and help for that game. And I managed to get back after 8 weeks, and we played Sheffield week before £1 million game, and they'd not won a game, I don't think, in middle eights. And we played them at Bramhall Lane at Sheffield United ground, and we got beat by Sheffield. So it weren't the ideal sort of warm up, really, for leading into the £1 million game, and everyone was so rattled, honestly. And with that being the first one, it was like everyone was just obsessed with, if you lose, your contract's gone day after. And I mean, there's not, much bigger thing to play for really than you've got a mortgage online, you've got your family at home and stuff like that. And yeah, it were a tense week. We'd obviously had a couple of players suspended as well, so we had players like going in and saying, "Can't we bring them back?" And Brian were like, "No, we're not bringing them back in." So we had like no Tim Smith and stuff like that. And he made a few changes to the team, so he didn't play Matty Ashurst, who were like probably one of our most. You knew with Matty you're going to get a sort of 8-9 out of him every week, and he didn't play Matty either. So everyone was, somebody just fired at him. So yeah, it was just a really weird week. And even after the game, I think the joy of the fans and stuff like that, I just felt exhausted. I felt
relief,
numb really, as well, because I looked at their team, and I knew players on their team like Dale Ferguson, Danny Addy, and stuff like that, and kind of felt for them a little bit. But I think the emotion of the week had just drained everything out of us. And I mean, luckily we started pretty well. We got a couple of early tries, and then Danny Addy misses the kick, and then Scott Moore scores that try near the death just to clinch it. And you wouldn't have liked to think what had happened to the club and the players if the result had gone the other way, but thankfully it went the right way for us, and we did manage to get some energy after and enjoy a Mad Monday and a decent drink after.
I can imagine, mate. Yeah, right. And you know what, Lord? Like, you've done many a Mad Monday. I imagine that was one of the not necessarily atmospheric, like for joy, but just heavy drinking, because it might as well have been a £10 billion game, because to use, without being rude to the fans in the club, that's irrelevant because you got your own bills.
Yeah.
So that's just a glamour tag for the game, innit? But for yous, it's much more than like the sport, isn't it? It's livelihood.
Yeah. And I think at that time you kind of realise more than ever, really, that this is a job, and I might not have a job tomorrow, So there were a real worry on that. I don't think there were really too much in place for if it were a Super League team that lost and dropped out, what would happen in terms of, is there any protection around your wages or anything like that? Will there be like a parachute payment? There weren't ever too many conversations really in terms of what would happen if we did lose. So it would have been, it'd have been a scary time. But yeah, it were it were a good Mad Monday, that one, actually. Yeah.
So what was wrong? It was a good one.
It was a good one, yeah. It was, and again, just the relief really of everybody. I think a few people had signed elsewhere, so they had different stresses to everyone else. But it was just a relief that we'd managed to do it and stay up. I think it's always good to celebrate at end of the year, but when it was so cutthroat before, I think the relief factor sort of made everyone, extra happy, really.
And I'll think about the injuries, mate. How have you been outside of like a niggle? Have you had quite a few majors?
Yeah, to be honest, I've never really had many niggles. Everything that I've had sort of always been, you need an op or you're going to have a bit of time out. So, touch wood, I've not had too many for a long time, really, but I've got stuff that are like lasting. So, like my fingers, they don't go any straighter than that. Got a clip-on wedding ring, stuff like that. The worst injury that I probably had, like in terms of pain, was I got an infection in my knee. So we played at Newcastle ground, and I got stud mark across my knee, like flapped my kneecap up, basically just the skin on it, and we sort of cleaned it, glued it down so I could play it second half. And then a couple of days later, my missus, she's an air hostess, so she were away somewhere, and I woke up in bed and I was just in agony, like my leg were red hot. Went to A&E. I managed to sort of get my Senate car. I had an automatic, luckily, so I could sort of drive it with one leg. Got to A&E. Said, "Oh, no wrong with you. Give me 2 paracetamol." Sent me home. Same again. Day after, I had to go to A&E again. And at the time, I'd had like an issue with my cartilage in my knee, so they sent me home. Did some blood tests. Said there's no wrong with you. And I had an appointment with Steve Bollan, who'd done all my knee surgery before, just for this cartilage. And I went in and I said, honestly, I've been in agony with my knee. And he looked at it and he said, we need to get him a bed straight away. And they tried draining it in A&E and they got about that much out. And he drained it and he got about half a pint out of it straight away. And yeah, I reckon they were saying, like, if you'd have been in sort of any longer before you came, you could have lost your leg, like the infection was that bad.
Yeah.
So they had to, I were in A&E in hospital for like 2 weeks. I had to cut all the infection out of my knee. Yeah. Pack it
That's
with
heavy,
like,
that, isn't it?
yeah. It were honestly unbelievable. But yeah, that's probably the worst thing I've had, to be fair. I've had both my shoulders done. I've had about 8 ops on my knees, broke my cheekbones. Yeah, fingers. That's about it, really.
It's meant that you have to go like A&E, because we just don't imagine that, do we? We think you've got booper on speed dial.
Yeah, well, it was like middle at night, like 2 o'clock in the morning. So like, couldn't really even ring anyone from club, So yeah, I just had to bomb down to Pinderfields.
It's just bizarre, isn't it? So another thing, mate, is, was there any opportunity, or was you offered a route out of Wakefield at any point for you to maybe agree to, and then they'd go to Wakefield, or is it always done proper?
Good one. Yeah, to be fair, it were always pretty much done properly, really. So there always murmurs about people that were interested, rugby rumours and stuff. You always hear stuff like that. Salford were sort of really interested when I think they sort of financially, Wakefield were in trouble, and Salford sort of came. They bought Tim Smith, and they were sort of interested in buying me as well. But I think the club basically wanted to keep me and sort of, show a bit of strength, build the team back, and stuff like that. So I chatted with Marwan a couple of times, more sort of friendly than anything, never really discussed any sort of terms or all like that. But he'd always said, look, I'd love to bring you to Salford. This is even before like the financial stuff and that at Wakey. So I sort of went and had a conversation with Kath Everington, more just to see what was going to happen with Wakefield. And I didn't even have a chance to say anything, and Kath just said, "You're not going anywhere." And I remember I remember it well. It was like queuing up to go in and see Headmaster. She's Kath. She's awesome, like, and she's so funny and dry and straight, and yeah, and then like that was it really. I weren't bothered. I was just happy. I was happy to stay. I don't think I really wanted to go too much anyway. I was more just worried about what was going to happen with the club. And to be honest, that's the only time I came even close to leaving, really, until they'd had enough of me.
Well, no, it just shows it's a big statement to the fans as well. And no offense to Tim, but he'd had his troubles a little bit before he come to use on me, and I can't imagine letting Tim go at the repercussions of letting a Danny Kirmond go.
Yeah, and I think being captain as well, I think it was important that, you know, they sort of tried to keep hold of me. So yeah, it was good. It was nice. It felt good that I was wanted elsewhere, but it also felt good that they wanted to keep me and, you know, start that building process again. So yeah, it was difficult, but you know, it was a good feeling.
An extra row on that, Kath, and put my name above that stand there, and I'll stay. So another thing I ask people, mate, is I'm quite sentimental. So are you someone that keeps stuff, or are you very much a in the moment kind of guy?
I do keep things, yeah. I keep majority of my shirts. So I've got majority of them. I've got sort of programs from when I was younger. I've got all my programs from when I went to Australia, and, you know, an old school photo album from them, you know, before you had your mobile and that. Yeah, I've got sort of a runners-up medal from Wembley, even though I didn't play, you know, so I'd give my old man that. They've got that at home. Testimonial shirt. So I had my testimonial game with Hull, a shared game with Danny Washbrook, who I've obviously played quite a few years with. So I've got that split down middle with washes. So that's one of my favourite bits. And yeah, I just tend to sort of keep shirts more than anything. Bit of training gear, but my dad normally and my uncle normally nick all that. So.
And touching on a testimonial, mate, is how much work goes into it, and how does a testimonial come about? Do you have to seek that, or the RFL offer it you?
Yeah, so you have to apply for it. So club sort of applies on your behalf. So I think the sort of the hoops you have to jump through on that is like 300 games or 10 years at a club. So I think when I applied, I'd done about 290 games and 8 years at Wakefield. So they didn't grant me one at all at first. So Michael appealed and got me 3 months. And work-wise, it's basically as much as you want to put in. You know, you have a committee that organise it on your behalf. So I had Tracy Carter, Michael's wife, she was brilliant. Sue Parker as well, and Lee Robinson, who does Trinity Heritage. He did all the sort of, you know, the history of what I've done and where I've been and stuff like that. So I had a really good team, really, that sort of helped and took all the stress out of it. And people at Charleston, so Charleston Cricket Club and stuff like that, did a lot for me, and, you know, really helped out. So whilst it were only 3 months, the club did a lot in terms of giving me a game and stuff like that. And it was quite successful. I enjoyed it.
It's mad that you've had to appeal and get a shortened one with what you've given to the game. But it baffles me, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it'd have been nice to have 12 months, you know, but at the same time, you know, I was grateful to get anything really. But yeah, I look at some and you think, well, you know, it'd have been nice to get 12 months, especially with being the captain for so long at the club as well. I think the club would have liked to have 12 months to do it, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right in it. What you've not had, you don't miss, do you, I suppose, mate?
No.
Yeah, the 3 months is a bonus. You didn't tell me you had a scrapbook, and I'm hoping you've got cutouts stuck together in some dodgy book somewhere from when you were like under sevens.
Do you know what? My mum and dad have got a load of stuff, and then my missus made me a scrapbook.
That's class, that.
Like literally, it's got like paper, like the cutouts from the paper and that in. So
Well.
she made me a scrapbook. I think she must have been skint one Christmas or something.
Yeah, she come through duty free and it'd been slight. So when leaving Wakefield come about, Dan, did you feel ready, mate? Was a new challenge needed? Was it mutual?
Yeah, it was mutual. Yeah, I mean, I've always had a really good relationship with Michael Carter. It was always easy whenever we had any negotiations to do or anything like that. It was always easy. Again, we'd just sit down and get everything done in the day, really. Well, I say the day, it was probably over a coffee majority of the time. It was just that easy to do, especially towards back end of my career because at Wakefield, because I just wanted to be there still. I always I wanted to play, and I wanted my kids to see me play at Wakey, weirdly, and I didn't have kids till quite late, so my daughter's only 3, so I think the only game she came to was a reserve game I played at back end. So I was
Job done, though.
I know I'm quite good like that. I didn't get to do that. But yeah, it was always easy with him. He'd sort of say, "I've got this." I'd say, "All right," basically, and we'd go. I just respected him. I knew what he was working with, and I was just grateful, to play for my hometown club still. And then when it did sort of come to an end, it was basically COVID had happened. We'd gone back. I was in and out at team. There weren't much you could do around the club. There weren't as many fans and stuff like that in. And it kind of just took the love out of it a little bit for me. I weren't playing, and all the other stuff that goes along with it weren't sort of happening. There were no corporate or things like that. So it got to a point. I think I just had enough, really, and I went again. Like I said, like Michael had always been honest with me, and I just went in and I said, "Look, I think it's time. I think I'm done." And he said, "Yeah, that's no problem at all. I'll look after you with whatever we need to do." And that was it. Went as separate ways.
What do you mean, Michael? I'm only messing.
Yeah, I know. Like when you go try and get your Sky a bit cheaper, he sent me on my way. Like, but no, I don't know how I felt really. I was just like, I knew that I'd had a long time there. I'd had a really good time. I couldn't offer too much to them on the field anymore in terms of if I'd have stayed for the extra couple of months till the end of the year. Would I have done anything with them next year? Probably not. Anyway, so I sort of just decided, I had a daughter at home at that time as well. So I just decided to, have that time with her really. And yeah, went our separate ways. But still, I speak to Michael quite regularly now. Still really sort of close with the club and stuff. So yeah, we went our separate ways, but with an handshake and a smile, definitely.
So let Danny go and get a hybrid pitch because he doesn't like him.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably it. He says, we can get it now.
So really, mate, you've been quite lucky with like club owners, really. I mean, you're our CEOs because you've gone on with Michael and York's come about, and Clint's a good bloke and he loves the sport and he's got good ideas, and York seems to be one of them clubs that have got a real chance when the IMG stuff comes around. So how did the York move materialise, and did it take much?
Again, no, it didn't take an awful lot, to be fair. I'd played with James Ford at Featherstone, so I've known Fordy a long time, and he just texted me out of blue and said, because obviously I don't think they got going again with COVID Championship. I think they had like an extended break, so they'd had a long time off, and he said, "Oh, do you want to play again next year?" And I'd not really thought about it, to be honest. I was just like, I'd gone to work with my brother. We like So I'd gone digging again. That was not something that I'd ever planned on doing, but with COVID, there weren't really any jobs about, and I said,
What was you doing, mate? Because you
it's
froze
possible.
then, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I went
It's all
working
right.
for a company called Trenchless Solutions,
Right.
working on repairing sewer pipes for Yorkshire Water. But my brother worked with them, and his boss Jamie was a big Wakey fan, and he said when I left, he said, Jamie said, why don't you come and do a proper? I sort of said that, yeah. I went and did that, and then Fordy texted me and he said, "Oh, do you want to play again next year?" And I says, I'd not really thought about it. I was just enjoying my family time and that. But I met Fordy for a coffee, and he offered me a deal, and I just said because I knew Fordy a long time, and I knew it was part time, and I just said yeah. I said, you know what, yeah, I'll come and have a go, and I loved it straight away. It were awesome. Obviously, a really good setup, very professional sort of environment. Fordy's like a really intellectual, intelligent coach, knows a lot about the game. Reminded me a little bit of sort of Rich Agar, in how he sort of studies the game and the ideas that he comes up with. And we had a good group of lads. And I think from going from a full-time sort of environment where, especially during COVID, it was quite it was a bit negative, really, because no one were enjoying it. It was different to what everybody were used to. From going from that to then going to where people are working every day, and then they go in and they're still, putting that same effort in. I think it made you realise why you played rugby in first place again. And I really enjoyed it. Just loved every minute of it playing. And I used to travel with Tim Spears as well, who was sort of, a bit older than me. So I got that sort of old school feeling for rugby again. And, the car journeys that me and Spearsy had just really brought that love of rugby back again, with some of the stories and that we'd have. It was brilliant. I love it. It were an hour, but it seemed like 5 minutes every time.
Full circle, mate, innit? From back to that and 5 days and that, when the old school come back to help you out and stuff.
Yeah.
So when you first and what, it's not a bad ground to go and play at either, mate, is it? So what's it like when you pull that top on and it's not white and stuff, and yeah, because you must look at you must have looked and thought, it's a bit mad, this.
Yeah, it was quite weird, to be fair. It was all weird. Obviously, I've been at Wakefield for a very long time, so it was strange. I think once I pulled it on, it probably wasn't as strange as what I thought it was going to be. I was worried that I wouldn't get that same feeling, that I wouldn't get that same sense of pride and the same desire to work as hard as what I had when I was at Wakefield. But I think seeing the part-time boys ripping how they do, I think it just brought it back out of me, really. And I had a lot of respect for Fordy as well, and respect for the players around me. Ben Jones Bishop had gone as well, who were playing with at Wakefield for a long time. So I had some sort of teammates around me that I'd played with before. So I thought it was going to be really weird, but it wasn't, and it was quite a nice transition.
Stuff, mate, and obviously future ambition there. What is it, and how do you think it'll go?
Well, obviously the sort of ambition of the club's to get into Super League. That's probably not going to be through promotion this year. We haven't started too great, but it's a real transition year. Obviously, Endo's come in, and Fordy's now gone to Wakefield. We've got a lot of changeover in sort of playing staff as well. But I think it's a real building year. So Endo's brought some great ideas in. I think what Clint's doing in sort of moving the club forward, amalgamating the sort of women's and men's team, and getting that sort of same brand, and having that pushing on together is going in a really sort of a great way, really. And it's sort of, I'm fully in on their goal, really, and sort of helping the club achieve what they want to achieve. Personally, I just want to play as long as I can. I'm not going to sort of play for too long and, not be able to sort of carry kids about and stuff like that, or put myself at sort of risk. I'm very self-aware, and I'll know when it's time to sort of give in. But I think whilst I'm enjoying it and playing all right, I'll keep playing. I think the probably main indicator will be I'll stop getting picked, and then
that's it, isn't it, mate?
you soon realise you're not good enough anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's okay. It's a weird one. I think when you get to 30 in rugby, everyone sort of starts telling you to retire, or you should be retiring. But like you said before, we're at the start of my career. If I weren't playing and getting paid for it, I'd only probably be playing up at Charleston, and getting chinned off some fug from an estate somewhere. So I'll just
being a YouTube viral sensation.
yeah. So that's probably the goal. But I'd like to get back to Wembley again as well. Obviously, we're in Challenge Cup this week against Newcastle. So if we win that, we're pretty close then to getting a shot at that 1895 Cup again and getting back to Wembley. So that'd be nice to get that again toward the back end of my career.
And obviously, with the crappy circumstances that the family've been through, mate, it no doubt it's changed your outlook on life as well, hasn't it? Like, you'll know yourself without getting picked when it's time. You don't need to be told. You've been there, you've done it. You'll know the happiness and the ability and wanting to play as well, which is a big thing. So the outlook on life will have changed, won't it, mate?
Yeah, massively.
Since that sad tragedy, like it does.
Yeah, I mean, it will literally the maddest sort of week emotionally. I mean, my brother sort of was killed, and he wanted to donate his organs. My brother, he was a soldier, so he'd been to Afghanistan and Iraq, so he'd actually signed. This is how daft he was. He'd signed donor register twice, so they managed to sort of keep him alive for 5 days.
Sorry to laugh, mate.
No,
it's just like,
mate, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you to laugh. But they managed to keep him alive for 5 days, about 5 days, so that he could donate all his organs. So he managed to sort of donate his heart, his kidneys, his lungs, and all sorts of stuff. So he'd already like helped five people, straight away to sort of carry on their lives. But all that time, my wife was sort of ready to give birth as well. So she was like ready to bust. So 5 days after my brother sort of passed away, we had a second daughter. Like, so emotionally, it was a real sort of roller coaster of emotions for that sort of week. Really, it's such the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life, to then having another daughter as well. So it was kind of like a numbing time, I suppose. But what helped me get through it was rugby league, playing rugby, and rugby was the only thing that were normal. I'd go out in the street, and I mean, it's lovely that everybody cares and stuff. And the first thing people would say to me in the street, well, I'm sorry about your brother, and as devastating as it was, and as nice as it was that people were showing that they cared, it was hard to sort of escape it as such. And rugby gave me that opportunity to escape it. I went straight back, to be fair. I think I had about 5 days off, and Fordy were always sort of messaging me, just checking in that I were all right. And I spoke to Fordy, spoke to Clint, and said, can I come back in just to, get away from everything more than all? And Fordy says, yeah, you can come and you can just train if you want. And I said, mate, I'm not coming in just to train. If I'm coming in, I want to play. I'm not just training.
Yeah.
And we played Bradford like that week after, and it was a massive derby game for York. There's always a lot of feeling in them games, and it was just really like refreshing for it to be so normal. We played, like George Flanagan, who, everybody knows is a bit of a grubbish George. And, I love watching him play and stuff. And he tackled me and, he gave me normal sort of forearm on face and stuff like that. And I was just like, I was really thankful for it. It just was nice to have that normality, really, and that release. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want to be mollycoddled, do you? And you want that hour and a half of just like release, don't you? You can forget everything, mate, when the whistle blows. It's just you and love in it,
Yeah, that's
basically.
it. Yeah, it's literally U26 there on field, and no one else can really sort of have any influence on that. So yeah, it was good. It was good. I really enjoyed getting back into it and that release from everything.
Right, mate. So it's that time of the chat where I've got a few daft questions for you, mate. So, any pre-match superstitions?
No, I haven't, unfortunately. I used I used to have a Chinese before every game, the night before, like.
Aye, man.
I know, yeah. My missus like goes mad, like she's not a big lover, like, but I was dead superstitious about it, and I'd have it before every game: chicken and black bean, egg fried rice, and chips as well. But yeah, I'm not as tied up on it now. I think having the kids and that, I've kind of got to tone it back a bit. So yeah, I'm not as bad.
Well, just get rid of the chips.
Yeah, yeah.
So the toughest player you played with and against, definition of toughest is different for everybody, Danny, innit?
Yeah. So toughest that I've played with, I'd go with Luke Robinson. For such a small man, when he went and played hooker, I've never seen anyone put the body on the line like he did. There's a lot of talk about concussion and stuff like that now. And I've seen Robbo get knocked out a few times and just, get back up and carry on. I've seen him with splits all over his eyes and just, tape it up and carry on, niggles. He played with a bad hip for, a couple of seasons at the back end of his career, I think. And he was just really tough and led by example. And I think in that successful period that Huddersfield had, I think he was a massive part of that. To play against, I'd say Gaz Ellis, obviously played a similar position to me. And you knew every time you carried ball near Gaz, he wasn't just going to tackle you, he was going to try and kill you. Every tackle he did was tough, every carry he did was tough, and just did everything 100%. And I think he was someone that I really looked up to when I was sort of coming in as a back rower. He'd obviously sort of been at Leeds and then gone to West Tigers, and following his career and getting opportunity to play against him was, really something that I really enjoy.
Right, mate. So your favourite away ground?
I'm gonna go Cass, just because I love the atmosphere and the games that we've had there. Obviously, it's a bit of a dive, but yeah, I've had some, really good memories there. Just not always the results, but the atmosphere and the feeling within it. So I'd say, Cass would be my favourite sort of away game.
Do you prefer the older stadium, mate? Because that's a proper ground, innit? I like the new ones, but that's a proper ground.
Yeah. I mean, I think the new ones that are made for rugby are perfect. So like Warrington, Doncaster's perfect when you play there. York's is brilliant. And I think moving forward, they create a little bit more of what you can offer to people as well. So like, for example, my missus will go with 2 kids. There's a park outside. They can have something to eat, do a bit of shopping, watch game, go to the cinema, and there's all that other side of things that can attract different people to the game. But in terms of sort of atmosphere, the older grounds, they take some replicating.
Yeah. So a go-to karaoke song, mate, after you've had a few beers with the lads.
I'm hopeless, me. I can't even remember what I sang last time.
Was it that good? The Guinness.
we do it on our Christmas do as well. I'd go Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, I reckon. Or maybe meatloaf, actually. Go on, I'll go meatloaf, bat out of hell.
Do you blast it out, mate? Or do you
Yeah,
get
like,
people involved? Are you a
I mean, I'm
shuffler?
horrendous. I'm shocking at singing, like, but I have a good crack at it.
Class. So, if you could go back and tell a younger you something that you've learned so far, mate, what would it be?
I'd probably say three things. I'd say don't get caught up in the negatives, don't get caught up in the positives, and enjoy every minute because it goes very quickly. And that'd be it, really. Just, yeah, I think, especially for younger kids now as well, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the good bits and get caught up in the bad bits, and you miss a lot of it out. Especially in terms of, you know, your social media and stuff like that, Twitter. You know, the same people who are giving you the praise one week will be on your back the next week. So you can't get caught up in either of them, really. And it goes very quickly. I've been blessed to have a very long career. You know, I've been sort of playing nearly 20 years now, and it's gone in a blink of an eye, especially as you get towards, you know, 28. It disappears very quickly, so just enjoy it.
Right, mate, and if you're willing to, a 1 to 13 that you've played with.
I've written it down, this because my memory's not great. So at fullback, I'd have Richie Mathers, because he helped me a tremendous amount at Wakefield in my first sort of few years there as a leader as well. And then on wings, I've got Ben Cockayne and Ben Jones Bishop. For me, Bish is probably one of the best finishers in game, and still is. I think he's still super league quality, really. So I'm surprised, you know, that he's in the championship. And Benny speaks for himself. I've had many good games with Benny, but many good Sunday nights with him as well. We used to get out quite a bit after a game on a Sunday, did me and Benny. And then centres, I've got Dean Collis, who a Rolls Royce of an Aussie centre that came over. Didn't like the cold too much, and you know, struggled to get his backside off the radiator until about March. But you know, Dino were a great player, and he's a great mate. And then I go with Paul Fataway, who I played with at Huddersfield. You know, he was Kiwi international, and he'd come over, and there's just the time that he'd give to everybody and helped out with the young kids were massive, really, for me. I thought if someone like that can come and do that kind of thing, you know, we all should probably be helping out a bit more. And then at halfback, I've got my mate Jacob Miller, although he left Wakey to go to Cass, which, you know, I don't know if I can let him ride that one out. And my mate, the wizard, Tim Smith. You know, Timmy probably the best player that I've ever played with, really. He were unbelievable what Timmy, what he could do. And we just had a great relationship, both on and off the field, really understood each other. Front row, I've gone for Dave Fafita. Obviously speaks for himself what he can do on field, but away from field, a really good laugh in small doses. And then, not you on that. And then the other prop, I've gone for Ian Tonks as well, who were at Featherstone when I was there. Tonks, he did a lot for me in them early days. He'd obviously played with Cass and, you know, played at a bit higher level than a few guys that were there when I first went there. And he just gave me a lot of advice early on. And, you know, he probably gave me a bit more belief that I could go on and play sort of Super League, really, than anyone else did in them early years. So I'd have Tonks in there. At hooker, I'd have Kyle Wood. Kyle Wood's he's like a coffee. If you're tired, you know, spend a bit of time with Woody and you'll feel energised. He's an energiser both on pitch and away from it. It's just whatever you do with him, it's fun. He's a great bloke. And then in back row, do you want two back rowers or just one and me?
One and you as captain, kicker, what about everything, mate?
I'd have my back row partner, Matty Ashurst, in there. He's one of the most underrated players that, you could ever have, really. It were unbelievable, and still is for Wakey. I'll put another back rower in just in case I've got a bad knee or something, and I'll put Jamie Fielding, who I played with at Wakefield at Featherstone. Fieldy coached me at Stanley when I was a junior, and spending time with like a Super League player then at a young age, were brilliant for me and sort of give me, a taste of, what it would be like. And then I got the opportunity to play with him at Featherstone, and Fieldy taught me a lot both on and off the field, really. So it was brilliant to sort of get that opportunity to play with him. I'm actually playing with his son now at York. His son's just come on loan. So I texted him, I said, that's one way to make us both feel old, like. And then at loose forward, I have gone with Stephen Wild, who I played with at Huddersfield. Wildy was one of them players who do 50 tackles every week, real athlete. Played with Great Britain, and he was just a funny guy, negative as anything, but one of them negative people that bring positivity out of other people with it. So I'd go for Wild at loose forward.